Hey YouTube, how the heck are we doing? It is Foul Play here, and today we are back, and I'm going to give you guys an update on the new Boggle list that I've put together for you all post Lewis banning. I will be coming up with some pauper content real soon. Just ended up having a bit of a busy weekend and didn't get around to it last weekend, but I'll get it out for you guys this week for the coming weekend. Alright, so you guys are probably wondering what direction I'm taking Bogles in. The direction I'm planning to take it in is in elementals. What's my camera doing here? Alright, hopefully that's fixed and holds out. It is hot here today and my phone overheated. Go figure. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is mucking around with elementals, such as Solitude. So I'm going to bring you two lists here today, the first of which is Green-White and the second of which is going to be Bant. So just go to the first list here. So we saw a great deal of success with Bant Bogles, and we essentially took that from a meme deck to actually being something very, very competitive. One of the main reasons for that is the fact that we could tap out on our turn, put our enchantments down, which is what we wanted to do, and then we could hold up interaction during our opponent's turn in form of counter magic while being tapped out. So force negation, fantastic for us. So the exact same premise is going to come into play with the elementals as well. So Solitude is a really, really good removal spell. And it does gain your opponent life. It does cost exiling a white card from your hand to evoke it. But it's actually really, really powerful. A really powerful effect, and I rate it above Path to Exile personally, with all these really cheap 1 mana decks running around with Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler, all that sort of stuff. And then of course we've got Endurance as well, which when it enters the battlefield, up to one target player puts all the cards from their graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order. Now, Endurance is a really nice double-edged sword because we can use it to tap out, to remove our opponent's graveyard, but we can also use it to reshuffle our graveyard back into our library if we're up against a deck like Mill. So it actually has a little bit of versatility to it, which is really, really nice. Okay, so the list is as follows. I have got the 4 Gladecover Scout and the 4 Bogle here as normal. I've put Core Spirit Dancer down to 2, just mostly having a bit of trouble finding slots for it. The main reason I'm having trouble finding slots for it is because I'm including Leyline of Sanctity as a 4 of in the main deck. Now this brings, this helps protect your hand. Helps protect you against burn decks that are running around, I guess by extension Mill as well, by hand disruption. But the really, really interesting thing about this is if you draw a Leyline of Sanctity past your opening turn, usually you don't get to play it and it's sort of dead. But you can now pitch that to Solitude. So hopefully some of you saw that coming. But yeah, it's really handy, nifty interaction, which I think is really, really strong. Obviously, these pitch cards cause card disadvantage, and late game we can help use Core Spirit Dancer to help catch that up. But the main advantage to them is that tempo that they bring. We don't have to hold up mana, which our deck really hates doing. So we've also got 2 Prismatic Endings, so this can be useful against like Amulet decks or Hammer decks, just getting rid of that problem permanent there. Usual culprits of Ethereal Armor, Hyena Umbra, Rancor is 4 ofs. We've got Spider Umbra here as a 2 of, Daybreak Coroner is a 4 of, and Spirit Mantle is a 2 of. So there's potential to go for like a Grispoon or a Sentinel's Eyes in these slots, depending on what the metagame is. But I've got Spirit Mantle here just to help play around Chalice and help play around Chalice and Engineered Explosives, Blast Zone, cards like that. So additionally, I've seen a lot of people on Facebook complaining about the fact that we're in such a worse position because Beside You, however you say it, who endures, is now in the metagame. I actually think this is a really strong deck, and I 100% want to adopt this. With Prismatic Ending and Besiege, those two combined, that gives us 4 main deck answers to cards like Chalice of the Void, which would normally be dead against. So this is really, really strong. Really impressed by this. Obviously, there's a small opportunity cost to including it. So, for example, in my previous lists, we only had 3 sources that tapped for... we only had 2 sources that tapped for only green. Now we have 3 to 4. I forgot to put Dryad Arbor in this list, but obviously you can very easily include Dryad Arbor as one of the 20 lands, maybe by just trimming on 1 Temple Garden. But yeah, the point we run into is we've then all of a sudden got 4 types of lands in our deck that only produce green mana, and that can make it difficult to hit our white enchantments onto the board and also hit a turn 3 Daybreak Coronet with that double white. The upside should hopefully outweigh the downside though. And if not, maybe it's the card we want to fit into our sideboard. Maybe we just play like 21 lands and treat this as more of a spell than a land. But it's really sweet and it's cool tech nonetheless. Additionally, we've got Spirit Link here for against burn decks, Gadot Teague for against Tron, Rest in Peace for graveyard decks. My dog is barking a lot there. I hope you can't hear that. Torpor Orb against ETB like Elementals, against Grieve decks. Endurance, again, graveyard hate, but additionally it can protect us against mill. And Force of Vigor for against Tron decks, against Amulet decks, against Hammer Time. So yeah, a lot of versatile cards there you can look at including, and I really, really think that the Elementals are going to be really strong for us. Alright, so moving across onto the Bant version. Now this version was a little bit harder to fit everything I wanted to into the deck, just because it was such a tight list to begin with. So we've got the Dryad Arbor in this one. I did remember to include Dryad Arbor in this one. The 4 Scout, the 4 Bogle, 2 Invisible Stalker. Still not like a massive fan of core, but I guess that's personal preference for people. So I've included Solitude as a 3 of and Force of Negation as a 3 of. No Leyline of Sanctity in this deck. Unfortunately, there's just not enough room for it, in my opinion. And Force of Negation sort of does a similar thing where it just stops that first discard spell, allows you to get your creature down, and then maybe you can stop a Liliana from hitting later on when you draw into another one. Now, Aqueous Form I've got here as a 2 of. I think this card's very, very important because of the Dragon's Rage Channeler, Murktide Regents, even Ragavan. This deck, because it's got now 6 spells which are being pitched here, it's really, really important that we make up that card disadvantage by allowing our creature to hit with Curious Obsession, with Staggering Insight. So it's possible that you want 3 or maybe even 4 Aqueous Form. I don't think Arcane Flight quite cuts it at the moment, just because of the size of a lot of these flying creatures. It might be useful to help blocking potentially, but at the moment my money is on Aqueous Form. Alright, so then we've got the usual core of Ethereal Armor, Hyena Umbra, and Rancor. There's also potential we can cut Hyena Umbra at some point to make room for more obsessions, more evasion. It just depends on how useful this totem armor is. And then, of course, Daybreak, Staggering Insight. So Staggering Insight is a fantastic card, obviously. The important thing to point out, though, is it has both color typings, white and blue. So it can be pitched to either Force of Negation or Solitude. Obviously, you'd prefer to pitch other cards first, but it's just nice to have that dual card that can go to both of your free spells. Still got the Besiege Who Endures here, a 1 of Breeding Pool, 1 Forest, 1 Hallow Fountain, 1 Island, 4 Mana Confluence, 2 Misty Rainforest, 1 Plains, 2 Temple Garden, and 4 Windswept Heath. So a total of 6 fetches, a total of 3 basics, and then a total of 4 shocks here. I think I cut was it the Waterlog Grove or the Horizon Canopy, whichever cycle land that it was. I got rid of that for the Besiege here. So yeah, again, I think Besiege is just a very, very strong card that we should be incorporating. With the sideboard here, I've incorporated 1 Prismatic Ending. These sideboard slots are very, very competitive at the moment, and I'm not exactly sure on the exact configuration we want, but this is just to give us really an idea. Prismatic Ending gets a few extra points because now with this version of the deck, it can exile for 3. Which is pretty sweet. So Gadok Tig, usual Tron antics. Lavinia, so it's sort of the Azura's version of Gadok Tig. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls, each opponent can't cast non-creature spells. I thought it said counter that spell. They just can't cast it, full stop. And then whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So that can obviously be pretty handy against Tron as well, but also against other decks that are trying to utilize the elementals and against other decks that are utilizing Force and Negation. So Lavinia is pretty strong. I'd like to include her as more of a 2 than a 12, but competitive slots I thought at least would showcase her. So Rest in Peace, hands down, best graveyard hate you could want against Murktide decks, because it just permanently exiles the graveyard, right? We have included... No, I didn't include it. I didn't include Endurance in this list because it was a bit too tight. So then we've got the 4th Force of Negation in the sideboard. We've got the 4th Solitude. We've got the 3 Force Vigors, and the big boy, we've got Subtlety too. So we're including Subtlety as a 4 of. And this card's really, really excellent. It doesn't seem that great initially because you 2-for-1ing yourself to just put something on top of your opponent's library. And that doesn't seem super, super desirable. But depending on what you're putting on top, it can be really, really effective. So if it's a Murktide, your opponent's delved away a lot of their graveyard. Then the Murktide's put on top. Hey, maybe they can't even cast the Murktide next turn, and maybe that's going to the bottom of their library. Additionally, if you're doing it against a creature like Primeval Titan, maybe they can't pay for their pact now because their math allowed them to pay for pact, and Subtlety puts it on top, and then you win the game to an upkeep trigger. So that's pretty cool. And additionally... I guess other cards like Magus of the Moon or something, this could come in handy and clutch against. It's possible this shouldn't be a 4 of and it should be a 3 of instead or something, but I think with this card, with Solitude as well, start at 4 and work your way down. So just one other thing there as well, with Solitude, if you had Solitude and Path and you had a metagame where you needed lots of removal spells, you have access to like 8 premium removal spells and maybe even 12 of Prismatic Ending as well. I do prefer the instant speed on Path for removing creatures, but a lot of people have been flexing 2 Prismatics into their deck. So yeah, that is it for these little deck techs here, guys. I hope you're excited. I know the elementals are pretty expensive at the moment, both in paper and online. But if you have access to them, maybe they're in your collection already. I'm definitely advocating for you to go out, sleeve up decks similar to this, maybe fine-tuned a bit for your local meta, and just give it a go. Because honestly, like these are really powerful, and I've been saying for a while that I think they should be in the deck. At the moment, I'm just going to be looking at doing Pauper content for online, but definitely for all of the modern players out there, I thought I'd just give them an update with what I think is the most viable version of the deck. I do plan to do some modern in the future, maybe when I build up some tickets and can build into the deck a bit better. But at the moment, I'm just going to look at doing Pauper. Hey, maybe after a couple of weeks of doing that, I'll get bored of Pauper and try to go back into modern. We'll see. Thank you all so much for watching, though. Please let me know what you think about incorporating these cards in the comment section below. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.